I ask, please, for nominations for chair of the subcommittee.
Nominate yourself, Chair.
Thank you,
I
Councillor
second
Kelsey.
it.
Thank you, Councillor Johnson. Moving now to housekeeping. Mrs. Colwick, would you take us through housekeeping, please?
Thank you, Chairman. Please note that this meeting of the Licensing Subcommittee is being recorded by the Council for live broadcast and will be published on the Council website for a minimum of 6 months. In order to ensure the meeting is managed effectively, please could everyone present follow these ground rules for speaking. Only speak when invited to by the Chair. State your name before you speak if you have not been introduced by name. Please ensure that you unmute yourself and always turn on the video function before speaking. Mute your microphone when you are not talking. After each party has made their representation, the Chair will ask each person in turn if they have any questions or comments. However, if at any point you would like to speak again, please use the raise your hand function at the top of the right screen. Finally, please ensure background noise is kept to a minimum and mobile phones and other devices are turned off or switched to silent for the duration of the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So on then to item 2, apologies. We have no apologies, but we do have our reserve members, Councillor Flagg and Councillor Dwayne Farr. Thank you very much for attending. You won't be needed today as our main subcommittee members are with us, but I would ask please that you do stand by your phones just in case one of us is incommoded and you need to sit in for the second meeting. So thank you very much for attending today. Moving on to declarations of interest. Councillor Kelsey, any declarations of interest?
None, Chairman, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Johnson, any declaration of interest?
None, Chair, thank you.
Thank you. And for completeness, I have no declarations of interest. So protocol for public speaking, which is item 4, you have a revised protocol for virtual meeting, and this has been circulated with the agenda sheet. Moving on to the substantive, which is item 5, an application for review made by Dorset Police for More the Merrier. An application has been made by Dorset Police to review the premises licence of the premises known as More the Merrier. This matter is now brought before the Licensing Committee for determination. So I'll ask everybody to introduce themselves, please, in turn, and I'll start with myself. My name is Councillor Jude Butt. I'm Chair of the Licensing Committee and Chair of this subcommittee for the purposes of today's business. And my ward is Creekmore, Hilborn and Waterloo. Councillor Johnson.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Toby Johnson, Ward Member for Alderney and Bourne Valley, Member of the Subcommittee and Vice Chair of the Licensing Committee.
Thank you. Councillor Kelsey.
Yeah, morning, Chair. Councillor Kelsey, East Cliff and Springbourne Ward, and a member of this subcommittee today.
Thank you very much. And again, thanks to Councillor Flagg and Councillor Farr. Sergeant Gareth Gosling.
Good morning, Chair. My name is Gareth Gosling. I'm the Sergeant responsible for the Drug and Alcohol Reduction Team for Dorset Police.
Thank you. And Mr. Byron Sims.
Good morning. I'm Byron Sims. I represent Ezra officers, and we also have Mr. Muzaffar officers.
Okay, thank you very much. So we have Miss Ezra Oxus and we have Mr. Mustafa Oscars with us as well. I see them in my screen. You're very welcome this morning.
Thank you. Thank you.
Mrs. Rogers.
Good morning, everyone. Sarah Rogers, Senior Licensing Officer, BCP Council.
Thank you. And Mrs. Almeida.
Good morning, everyone. Mary Almeida, Legal Advisor to the subcommittee today.
Thank you. And Mrs. Colwick.
Sarah Colwick, Deputy Head of Democratic Services and Clerk to the subcommittee for today.
Thank you. Just to confirm that everyone who's given notice their intention to speak has been identified, and that anyone who wishes to withdraw any representation or doesn't wish to speak, show their hand now. I see no hands, so we'll take that as confirmation. We'll now move to the procedure for order of speaking with regarding hearing as follows. So the licensing officer will present the report. The questions of fact to the licensing officer will be made by all party, and members of the subcommittee will go first. I'd like you to note, please, read the exclusion of press and public will be read at this stage due to the exempt nature of the additional bundle submitted by Dorset Police in support of their application. So the subcommittee will be asked at this juncture to consider a resolution to exclude the press and public once the licensing officer has presented her report. The applicant will then make their application with questions of the applicant by all parties. Members of the subcommittee will, of course, go first. And the solicitors for the premises will put their case and questions the solicitor for the premises by all parties, with members of the subcommittee going first. And then all parties will be given an opportunity to sum up with the party who spoke last to go first. I'll then conclude the hearing and the subcommittee will deliberate in private with our legal advisor and our clerk present. Notification of the subcommittee's decision will be given within the period of 5 working days, beginning with the day or the last day on which the hearing was held in accordance with the regulations, which is today, Friday, 28th of April. And the notification of decision will include information about the right to appeal as appropriate. So if we are all content with that, I'd like to ask for agreement, please, with regard that we do follow this procedure. Sergeant Gosling, are you content?
I am content, thank you.
And Mr. Sims?
Yes, thank you, Chair.
And I accept that you're acting on behalf of your clients, so I will take them as being content with the order. Mrs. Rogers?
Yes, thank you.
Mrs. Almeida?
Yes, thank you, Chair.
And yes, that's it. Of course, Sarah's our clerk. Thank you. So finally, please may I remind all parties speaking not to repeat the information which they've already given in writing, but to expand on their written representations, and all questions must be asked through the chair, please, and there'll be no cross-examination of parties. So I'll now ask our licensing officer to present the report. Once they have done that, we will read the exclusion of press and public area. Thank you. Mrs. Rogers, you have the floor.
Thank you. Dorset Police have applied to review the premises licence at More the Merrier under Section 51 of the Licensing Act on the grounds that they believe the premises are not upholding the Prevention of Crime and Disorder licensing objective. Dorset Police believe the management of the premises are involved in criminal activity, including the purchase and resale of stolen goods. They no longer have confidence in the licence holder, who is also the named DPS. The premises have been the subject of 2 previous review applications, both by Dorset Police, details of which are set out in my report. Since submission of the report, Dorset Police have decided that there will be no further action against the case regarding the purchase and resale of stolen goods due to lack of evidence. Members are reminded that it is not for the licensing authority to establish any guilt or innocence of any individual, but to ensure that any powers exercised by them must be appropriate and proportionate for the promotion of the licensing objective and directed at the causes of concern which the application identifies once these have been established following this hearing. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So, members, are there any questions on points of fact for Mrs. Rogers? Councillor Kelsey?
Not at this time, thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Johnson?
Not at this time, Chair, no.
Thank you. Any questions on points of fact, Sergeant Gosling?
Nothing from me, Chair, thank you.
Thank you. And any questions on points of fact, Mr. Sims?
No, thank you, Chair.
Thank you. So we'll move on then to the exclusion of press and public, and I will read the notice. In relation to the items of business appearing below, the subcommittee is asked to consider the following resolution: that under Section 14, subsection 2 of the Licensing Act 2003, subsection Hearings Regulations 2005, and Section 100A, subsection 4 of the Local Government Act 1972, the public be excluded from the meeting for the following items of business on the grounds that it involves the likely disclosure of exempt information as defined in paragraphs 1, 2 and 7 in Part 1 of Schedule 12A of the Act, and that the public interest in withholding the information outweighs such interest in disclosing the information. So if we could please turn off our live stream. Thank you. Okay, and good morning again, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to the subcommittee meeting today for BCP Council for licensing. That's April 28th, and we're now back in public session after having gone in camera for our previous item. So we move to item 6, which is AFCB or AFC Bournemouth, Vitality Stadium, Kings Park, Bournemouth. An application for variation of premises licence has been received for the premises known as AFC Bournemouth Vitality Stadium, Dean Court, Kings Park, Bournemouth, BH 77AF. This matter is brought before the licensing subcommittee for determination. So we'll begin first with the participants, and I'll introduce myself. My name is Councillor Judith Butt. I'm chair of the licensing committee, and I'm chair of this subcommittee for the purpose of today's business, and I represent Creekmore, Hilborn and Waterloo Ward. Councillor Johnson.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Toby Johnson, Alderney and Bourne Valley Ward, Vice Chair of the Licensing Committee and member of this subcommittee.
Thank you very much. Councillor David Kelsey.
Yeah, Councillor Kelsey, member for Eastcliff and Springmore Ward and a member of this committee for today.
Okay, thank you very much. Mrs. Palmer.
Good morning, ma'am. Julia Palmer, solicitor on behalf of the applicant.
Thank you. And is it Miss Finney or Liz Finney?
Hi, Liz Finney. I'm Operations Director at AFC Bournemouth.
Very welcome. And Mr. Fudge?
Head of Catering Operations and DPS at AFC Bournemouth.
Thank you. And Mr. Lamb?
Yes, I'm the event director for Boxer.
Thank you. And Mr. Lord?
Hi, I'm the project lead for the Bournemouth event, working and representing Boxer.
Thank you very much. And Mr. Hill?
I'm Andy Hill. I'm one of the Senior Environmental Health Officers for BCP Council.
Thank you very much. And Councillor Lawrence Williams?
Yes, good morning, Chair. Lawrence Williams. I'm Councillor for Littledown Nyford and a resident of Littledown Nyford.
And you're here, you're also representing Mrs. Dunning, aren't you?
As you're here, I'm representing a number of people.
OK, I've got you down as representing Mrs. Dunning, but of course you can explain that to us when you speak. That's fine, Councillor Williams. Thank you very much. Mrs. Rogers?
Hello, good afternoon. Sarah Rogers, Senior Licensing Officer, BCP Council.
Thank you very much. And Mrs. Almeida?
Mary Almeida, Legal Advisor to the Subcommittee today.
Thank you. And Mrs. Culwick?
Sarah Culwick, Deputy Head of Democratic Services, clerking today's subcommittee meeting.
Thank you very much, everyone. So we all introduced each other, so we'll know who we are. So just move on then to confirm that everyone who's given notice of their intention to speak has been identified today, and anyone who wishes to withdraw representation or doesn't wish to speak, please show your hand now. Okay, I've seen your hand, so I can confirm that we are content. So I'll go through the procedure for order of speaking for our hearing, and the licensing officer will present their report. There'll be questions of the licensing officer on points of fact, and the members will go first. The applicant will then make the application, and the questions of the applicant will be made by all party, and members of the subcommittee will go first. Responsible authorities, we don't have any this time, but we do have other persons. We have Councillor Williams and those he represents. So you'll then make your representations. There'll be questions of the other persons, and members of the subcommittee will go first. Then all parties will be given an opportunity to sum up, with the party who spoke last to go first, and then the hearing will conclude. The subcommittee will deliberate in private with legal advisor and our clerk present. Notification of subcommittee's decision will be given within a period of 5 working days, beginning with the day or the last day on which the hearing was held in accordance with the regulations, which is today, Friday, April 28, 2023. The notification decision will include information about the right of appeal as appropriate. So I'll just confirm then that we are all content, Mrs. Palmer, and on behalf of your attendees, are you content?
I am, Mum. Thank you.
Thank you, and your team in the office. And Councillor Lawrence Williams, are you content?
I am indeed. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, and Mrs. Rogers, are you content?
I am, thank you.
And Mrs. Almeida?
Yes, I am.
Thank you very much. So finally, may I remind, please, all parties speaking not to repeat the information which they have already given in writing, but to expand on their written representations, and all questions to be asked through the chair, and there will be no cross-examinations of parties. Thank you. So, Mrs. Rogers, as our licensing officer, you have the floor to present your report. Thank you.
Many thanks. AFC Bournemouth Limited have applied to vary their premises licence to permit the addition of boxing and wrestling, and the amendment of conditions when these events are being hosted, and the permanent inclusion of the external areas within the perimeter of the fence to include a permanent bar by the South Stand for the sale of alcohol. The current licence permits the stadium to provide regulated entertainment and the supply of alcohol until 1 AM Monday to Thursday, 1:30 AM Fridays and Saturdays, and midnight on Sundays. Late night refreshment is permitted for an additional 30 minutes after these times. Conditions are imposed on the licence for when the stadium is used for entertainment. Therefore, an event other than boxing would already benefit from such authorisation. 5 representations were initially received, but following mediation by the applicant, 2 representations have been withdrawn. The remaining representations are therefore from Councillor Williams, Heather Williams and Sarah Dunning. As part of the mediation process, it was agreed to reduce the number of boxing events at the premises from 4 per year to 3, and now further reduced to 1 this year. Dorset Police agreed conditions with the applicant during the consultation period, which will be added onto the licence if granted. Environmental Health did not make a representation, but have been in consultation with the applicant throughout the process regarding noise management. As you said, Andrew Hill, Senior Environmental Health Officer, is here to deal with any technical queries you may have. No representations were received from any of the other responsible authorities. Should this application be granted and the applicants fail to operate in accordance with the licence and conditions attached to it, they will be aware that any of the responsible authorities or any other person may request a review of the licence at any time. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So any questions on points of fact, please? Members, Councillor Kelsey.
Not at this time, thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. And Councillor Johnson?
No, Chair, not at this time.
Okay. Any questions on points of fact, Mrs. Palmer or your team?
No, ma'am, thank you.
Thank you. And we don't have Mrs. Williams with us. And Councillor Williams, any questions on points of fact?
No, not at this point, thank you.
Okay, thank you. I'm not going to go through the list of other attendees we have because you have your legal representation through Mrs. Palmer. So with regard to questions raised, I will leave her to do that on your behalf. I also the same for Mr. Hill with regard to you're here in professional capacity to advise us. So thank you for that. So you now have your opportunity, speaking on behalf of the applicant, Mrs. Palmer, to put your case. You have the floor.
Thank you very much, ma'am. Ma'am, you will appreciate that the main issue before you today is the application to include the boxing match, which is scheduled to take place on Saturday, the 27th of May for the WBO Cruiserweight Championship fight, together with other undercard fights. Ma'am, Mr. Ajamand, as you have heard, is unable to be here today for the most pleasant of reasons. But he has prepared a statement regarding the way that the event has been organised and the reason for the slightly cramped time, if one can put it like that, of the organisation. And I will read that on his behalf, if I may, once I have concluded my own presentation.
Just to be clear then, this is over and above the supplementary information you've already submitted.
Oh, yes, ma'am. Yeah.
Just carry on, thank you.
Thank you. So, ma'am, the application, full details are set out in the report before you, which has been prepared, and I'm grateful for that. As you've heard, due to concessions, it's been altered to read just one event year. The synopsis of the current application is with your supplemental papers delivered on the 26th of April at pages 5 to 6. May I say at this stage that I'm very grateful to you and your colleagues for assimilating all the additional paperwork that has been piled on you at short notice, much shorter than we would have preferred, but trust that you will understand that mediation is an ongoing process, as are the operation plans on an event of this nature. And it's important that you have the most recent documents and most accurate information before you. The applicant is well known to the committee, having held a licence at this stadium for many years. As you've heard, it's licensed for entertainment in the club until 1:30 at weekends. This application is, of course, only until midnight at the latest, with the latest possible alcohol sales at 11 p.m. and music at 11:30 p.m. If the main fight does not go the full 12 bouts, the event will finish earlier, and could finish earlier even if it does go the full 12 bouts, if the undercard bouts, as they call the earlier fights, themselves don't go the full bouts. This is a long-standing club with a team that has excelled in operating match days, with crowds often well over 11,000 attending the Vitality Stadium. They have an excellent track record of working with their partners on the Safety Advisory Group to ensure that all the appropriate safety measures are in place, as well as promoting the licensing objectives. The steps put in place in respect of this event are contained primarily in it's called both an event management plan or an event operations plan, and you will see at your supplemental papers of the 26th of April, page 12, the index to that, which shows the full extent of the many and diverse matters that are taken into account with the consultation of the officers concerned. This actually gives the committee an assurance which you are very unlikely to get on most applications, that really a huge number of safety issues and protection is in force in respect of this proposed application. The supplemental papers before you today just include those parts of the operations management plan which may be relevant to the issues before you today, which you will see from your report is the prevention of public nuisance. The representations you've heard about and are shown at pages 73 to 77 of the report, with a synopsis of the main response we made on page 79. And you've heard that Mr. Criswick and Mr. and Mrs. Gurdon have since advised that they do not wish to pursue their representations. Keen to maintain the good relationships it has not only with the responsible authorities, and you've heard that none of those have made any representations to this application today, but with the residents in the area, it has continued to mediate, and Mr. Arjamand has even offered to speak directly with them. The most recent mediation, and Mum, I'm not too sure if we've been able to get details of that to you, but if not, I can give you details of it. Councillor Williams, in his email of the 25th of April, responded to our most recent mediation offer that we reduce boxing to the one event a year. I would personally commend the level of mediation pursued by the applicant on this occasion as being an admirable demonstration of the ethos of partnership working with neighbours as promoted by the licensing regime. Whilst Councillor Williams is still not prepared to withdraw his representation, he does say in his email of 25th April that 11:30 is too late to finish serving and selling alcohol, far too late for music. 10 p.m. is a reasonable offer, and we are sticking on those two final points. And Ms. Dunning, who responded early this morning, said very much the same thing, that 10 o'clock was the correct time, and that therefore this 10 o'clock issue and the terminal hour of the activities, particularly the alcohol and the music, appears to be the issue that is outstanding. Ms. Williams' representation effectively mirrors that of Councillor Williams, and you have Sarah Dunning's representation before you. There were some misunderstandings which were addressed in email exchanges with us. Ma'am, as the nub of the matter now indeed appears to be the terminal hour, unless the committee would like me to address any other issues, I intend to limit my address to those issues. Is the committee content with that approach, please?
Members, Councillor Kelsey, are you content? Councillor Johnson? Councillor Johnson, are you content with that approach?
Yes, Chair, sorry.
Yes, okay. Thank you, Mrs. Palmer. I'll just take this opportunity where there's a gap and we've been joined by our portfolio holder, Councillor Bobby Dove. So, Councillor Dove, would you like to introduce yourself just so that we know who you are, and you'll have to bear with us because I've done the introductions, but if you'd like to introduce yourself, you're more than welcome.
Thank you. Good morning. I wasn't planning to speak. I'm here as ward councillor because I couldn't get onto the live stream, so they very kindly sent me the link. If I can perhaps come in as ward councillor a bit later, I'd be grateful, just in case there are any matters that Councillor Williams hasn't been able to address, but I imagine he probably will do.
Well, I wouldn't usually allow that because you haven't given the appropriate time. So I think we'll have to leave it to Councillor Williams to do that. But you might be able to text him if there's something that you'd like him to bring forward and do it.
He's more than able, but thank you very much.
Yeah, you're very welcome because you're also our portfolio holder. Thank you very much. So, Mrs. Palmer, back to you. You have the floor.
Thank you very much, Mum. So the terminal hours requested, the concerns of the residents can be summed up as being disturbed by noise from the event and noise from people leaving the event when it finishes. With regard to noise from the event, that is specifically addressed in the report by the acoustic consultant with your papers. The most recent version of that report is in your supplemental papers delivered yesterday. And the report was updated as a result of Mr. King being encouraged by Mr. Hill, your Senior Environmental Officer here today, to amplify the report and make it more understandable for those of us who are less familiar with the technical terminology, and in particular to include the noise contour map, and that has now been done. Mr. Hill, I'm not sure if you want to address the committee on this specifically yourself, or if I may indicate our communications and you can let me know if I've correctly assessed that. May I do that?
Yeah, that would be fine, Mrs. Palmer. Thank you.
Thank you. If we could just go through the chair, I'll deal with that request. If you wanted to ask Mr. Hill to speak and give information, Mrs. Palmer, I'm more than content to accept that if that is what you're asking.
It was rather whether he would be happy for me to say and then him to come in if I've got it wrong. I think that's where we are at the moment.
Absolutely fine. Between the two of you, I'm more than content. That's absolutely fine. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So I understand from communications with Mr. Hill that Mr. King's findings are in fact based on a worst case scenario. So he's gone for issues like a downwind in one direction and the highest possible decibel levels, for instance. So he's gone for the worst case scenario, which is the right way to look at it, because it could be a worst case. But those findings is satisfied that noise emissions from the event will generally be well below the noise levels, even on those worst case scenario bases. And even the properties right next to the stadium will have a fair margin below the levels set in the conditions. Mr. Hill further pointed out that the levels which were set having regard to the concert guidance are based on a concert where music noise is consistent throughout a time frame. So it's going on and on, whereas in this case we have intermittent music. I'm advised that the situation will be as follows. There will be music during the ring walk for each bout, lasting for around 3 to 5 minutes. There will be music at lower level for 1 minute periods between rounds. Music between bouts will be for around 15 minutes, likely to be at a lower level than the ring walks in order to provide more of an impact for the boxers entering the ring. There would also be amplified speech from the MC announcing each boxer to the ring. Additionally, there will be periods when the music between the fights will need to be reduced further during live TV broadcasts. I understand that the nature of these intermittent sound outputs is likely to further reduce the impact of the noise from the event. Ma'am, before I go on, would you please permit me just to check with Mr. Hill that I've not misrepresented anything he has said by mistake?
Indeed. Well, I think that the committee well and truly understood that, but please, yes, please do come in, Mr. Hill, if you wish to clarify any of those points.
Yeah, that's fine. Thank you. So yeah, that's exactly that's correct. Thank you.
Lovely.
Thank you
Okay,
very much
thank you.
indeed.
Well done, Mrs. Palmer.
A draft of the letter to be sent to residents referred to in the noise management plan is included in your supplemental papers of the 26th of April at page 35, and you will see that that includes a complaint line, so that if there are any complaints or any issues, there will be a special line set up which will be immediately actioned by the appropriate person, and that may or will include the acoustic consultant who will be on site that day. Your statement of licensing policy at paragraph 1411 advises that conditions relating to noise nuisance will usually relate to noise emanating from the premises, and in anticipation of that, conditions of that nature are offered in the amendments to the conditions 213 and 225, which is in your supplemental bundle at page 6. So the other element of noise that concerns the residents is from people leaving at the end of the event. In your supplemental papers, you have 3 specific extracts from the event management plan. You have the Zone X and behaviour plan, and that starts at page 17. And this gives an overview of the protocols in place to avoid public nuisance. You will note that Kings Park Drive and Thistlebarrow Road will have parking restrictions, and it refers to how those will be enforced and the steward control of behaviour in this area. There is also reiteration of the instruction for spectators to leave quickly and quietly at the end of the event to reduce disturbance to neighbours and residents. There's also arrangement with your traffic management department for a dedicated team of parking enforcement officers to reduce nuisance or illegal parking in local roads. Then there is the transportation plan, and that is at pages 19 to 21 of your supplemental pack. The first paragraph of that document highlights the number of local persons who have currently bought tickets, with a high proportion being football club supporters. They will obviously all know the score, if you'll excuse the pun, on getting to and from the venue from their match day experiences. Details of additional parking arranged, coupled with arrangements for post-event egress, are also set out in this plan, together with parking restrictions and enforcement of those. Details of alternative travel arrangements are also highlighted, and you'll find those on pages 20 to 21. However, unlike football matches, not only will the difficult issues of supporter coaches be avoided, but both arrival and departure will be staggered over the time of the event, as experience shows from other boxing matches that spectators are unlikely to stay for the whole event. A proportion will have come to support boxers in one of the undercard bouts, and they quite often leave once they have seen the person they've come to support fight. So a proportion will have left before the main event is due to start at around 9:30. Post-event dispersal and controls, including messages reinforcing the request to leave quickly and quietly, and stewarding, are all set out at page 21 of that supplemental bundle. Then we have the spectator code of behaviour, which will be sent to ticket holders in advance of the event and also published on the website. This includes information, amongst other things, on planning the journey and information on parking. It includes details of requirements on leaving the stadium, again repeating the important announcement they must leave quickly and keep noise down to respect local residents. An announcement will be made before the main fight in the stadium to this effect, and messages reiterating this will be shown on screens in the arena, all supplementing what's in the code. The code makes it very clear that breach of its terms could lead to sanctions for the many football club supporters expected, including bans against future match entry. And boxing fans are also warned of sanctions, including bans on future boxing matches promoted by Boxer. This will be a particularly effective deterrent to those fans. Although having regard to guidance at paragraph 221 and also repeated in your statement of licensing policy at 1416, the behaviour of spectators away from the stadium is not generally a matter for the licensing committee. The applicant is nevertheless taking steps to ensure that they do not in fact cause nuisance problems to those living in this area in its various policies. There is also a fear expressed that alcohol sales beyond 10 p.m. could lead to public nuisance when persons leave after that time. It will be noted in the spectator code that no one who is drunk will be allowed into the premises, as page 24 of your supplemental bundle, and alcohol will be included in the list of prohibited items, excuse me, so that if somebody tries to come in with alcohol on them, they will be turned away, and full searches will be undertaken of all spectators. Similarly, anyone found to be drunk during the event may be ejected. The bars, which with the exception of one concession bar run by Saventa, with whom you'll be familiar from the Christmas market, will all be run by the club with their experienced and fully trained teams, and each covered by personal license holders and a security presence. The staff training will, of course, include ensuring that they do not sell to somebody who is already drunk. The Golden Circle, which is the area of seating immediately around the ring, will be an alcohol-free zone. Alcohol sales themselves will stop at 11 o'clock. Well, I'd ask the committee to be aware that boxing will be the prime reason for people attending this event, not alcohol. It's not a nightclub or a music festival, and there is no reason to believe that rowdy behaviour due to persons being drunk is going to be an issue. Well, I would respectfully submit that 11 o'clock for alcohol sales and 11:30 for entertainment are very modest terminal hours indeed. And I would respectfully submit that with these exceptional steps and controls in place for one event a year, there is no evidence to support the contention that there will be a public nuisance unless the hours are reduced to 10 o'clock. And so I submit, Mum, that there is no reason to reduce the hours requested. Ma'am, that concludes my address, but may I please now read the statement of Mr. Arjamand, which is to do with the boxing event itself and how it came to be.
Yes, please do, Mrs. Palmer. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Sky Sports have worked with Chris for several years. This is Chris Billam-Smith, of course, who is one of the contenders, and have worked exceptionally hard to build his profile to its current stature. Boxer runs 15 shows a year and are the exclusive boxing promoter on Sky Sports. Last year, we made Chris a promise when renewing our contract that we would do everything we could to make his dream come true of challenging for a world title. Chris is also extremely proud of his hometown, Bournemouth, and as an avid Bournemouth Football Club fan, we began the quest to make this dream a reality. Following 2 victories at successful shows at the BIC in 2022, last year, the last of which was in December, Chris went on to becoming the European and Commonwealth Cruiserweight title holder. This led to the opportunity to be ready to challenge for a world title if we could position a show to be financially viable. Boxer have since signed London's Lawrence Okoli, who is the WBO world title holder and the contender in this match. Boxer organised his debut fight in a title defence at the AO Arena in Manchester on March 25th this year, with the ambition of setting up a bout with Chris. Thankfully, Lawrence came through this event successfully, and Boxer were able to begin serious negotiations with all parties to organise a world title challenge between Chris Billam-Smith and Lawrence Okoli. These events are once-in-a-lifetime opportunities for boxers and warrant a huge amount of investment to promote the show for Sky and finance all the various aspects of the show. They need to be a true spectacle as they are viewed by millions around the world. To be financially viable, they require a large proportion of revenue from broadcasters around the world, but also from ticketing. So a venue of the football club's capacity is necessary. This needs to be coupled with the demand for tickets. Even when professional boxers occasionally have the opportunity to challenge for a world title, it isn't always possible to make it work financially. However, Chris's love for his town, coupled with the huge support the club has given him over the years, has made it possible to attract the necessary demand. With our events team having over 25 years of organising professional boxing and members of the team being responsible for Sky Sports boxing for nearly 30 years, Boxer have the expertise to set up the event under short time constraints and wouldn't take on Vitality Stadium if we didn't think it had the infrastructure to put on such an event. As we were in campaign for Lawrence Okoli's last title challenge, in the hope that we would be able to make things work for Chris, preliminary plans for this fight with AFC Bournemouth coalesced in mid-February, and the application before you was made on the 7th of March. All concerned would have been far more comfortable if there had been more time available to enable this hearing prior to the necessity to market the event, having regard to the risks. However, as a challenger, you simply aren't in charge of when that opportunity comes along. And it arose when Boxer was able to sign Lawrence, stage a bout for him, and set up a fight that the British Boxing Board of Control and the WBO would accept. If we are allowed to put on the event and Chris is successful, Bournemouth will have its first world title holder. And as the champion, he and we will then be able to dictate the date and locations of his defences. So moving forward, he would have much nearer the more desirable 6 months to know when he would be fighting, rather than the couple of months on this occasion. All the tickets that have been sold, although they show a good level of demand for the show, have been sold as subject to licensing. We have also had to get a head start on our broadcasting negotiations and expect the event to be televised in the UK on Sky Sports Showcase and Sky Sports Main Event to an audience close to 2 million and to over 150 territories worldwide. We plan on speaking about and shining a very positive light on Bournemouth Town and Bournemouth Football Club. Thank you, Mom.
Thank you very much indeed. So we move on then to questions of the applicant by all parties. So I will start with Councillor Kesley. Sorry, do you have any questions for Mrs. Palmer, Councillor Kelsey?
Yes, thank you, Chair. And just one, bearing in mind the event and the fact that the stadium is obviously in a highly residential area. The residents are used to the football going on and everything, but this is a slightly different type of event. Could Mrs. Palmer confirm that the dates of this event would definitely be what I would term as a non-school night, i.e. a Friday or a Saturday night? Obviously, those are the nights when people expect to get a bit more disturbance, but earlier in the week, people have to think about getting up for work, school children for school, etc. So the ideal thing would be if these events were to take place on a Friday or a Saturday night. Could you confirm that being the case, please?
May I just take very brief instructions? Thank you, sir. This event is, of course, on a Saturday, and my clients confirm that they are prepared to commit to future events being on a Friday or a Saturday.
Thank you, Ms. Palmer. I asked that in general terms. I like boxing, and I have noticed over the years that the majority of these main fights do take place at a weekend. So I just wanted to confirm that would be the case. So thank you for that answer. Thank you. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much, Councillor Kelsey. Councillor Johnson?
Not at this time, Chair. Thank you.
Okay, I have a few questions based around the item 10, the boxing letter, which obviously is key to ensuring that if you were so disposed to grant, that all residents would be well informed as to the event. You've got some gaps in here. Are you able to fill us in on the gaps which you have in here? I think it would be useful. I'll take you to the only time beyond 3 hours immediately after the event. That's the 1, 2, 3. That's the fourth para in. When controlled breakdown of sounds, and sound checks are currently scheduled to take place between, because obviously I'm in Creekmore and I have Upton Country Park, and we have all sorts of amazing music festivals, and the sound checks are always much louder than the actual event itself. And Andrew's nodding there, which is absolutely fine. So to make sure all the woofers and tweets are working, etc., etc. But I think that's really key. So when would those sound checks be made? And the other one was about the dismantling of the whole premise afterwards. Is that done on the night? I think it suggested it was. And is that prudent, or would it be better not to prolong any further activity on that night and to be doing it perhaps the following day? That's just a question. Thank you.
Thank you, Ma'am. With regard to the letter, as you will see right at the top, it is still a draft, and details have to be received from the people who are setting up as to exactly the times that will be included in there. And I don't think we have further information, but I will ask Ms. Finney, just in case you've got any updates on the gaps. Right. Yes, as she quite rightly says, it may be that the representatives from Boxer who are kindly attending might be able to fill in those gaps.
Right. So we've got from Boxer, we've got Mr. Lamb. Yes, Mr. Lamb or Mr. Lord. Mr. Lamb, perhaps you're the event director or his representative. Mr. Lamb?
Yeah,
Mr.
hello
Lord, I
there.
don't mind which, you can toss a coin for it.
No,
Just-
to be honest, Graham is the project lead on this, so I'm going to let him answer this for us.
Okay,
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lord. You have the floor.
Thank you, ma'am. Currently, we're working through the schedule for a more detailed production running order. Currently, we are looking for the Friday late afternoon, early evening to be doing sound checks and doing a rehearsal, essentially. But more details will come through over the following weeks if we're successful, so that we can work through the production schedule in much more detail. If you'd like, I could also move on to the second point, which was just the dismantling as well. The first point being is that as soon as the event is finished, all we would like to do is remove some seating. So this would be more manual handling, that would remove some furniture so that the boxing ring itself can be removed, and that the Sky television broadcasting vehicles could be removed as well. So that would be the removal of some cabling. So again, we are not proposing that we would be undertaking any work that would require heavy machinery. It would be just to remove the items that we can remove off site quickly, so that the following day, the Sunday, we could then start the main dismantling of the bigger infrastructure, which would be the rigging elements.
And your operatives would be mindful of that noise. Just as the clients are asked to be quiet on leaving, they would be doing the same.
Absolutely, yes, and we would be working with them.
With regard to the objections that we've had, because they sit around noise. And I understand that you'll want to be doing the checks as late as possible, because you'll want a smaller gap between it happening and working and the following day if it doesn't. So I get that. But if they could be not, late into the evening, too late into the evening, because although it's a Friday, it is a weekend, I think it's still something which the residents will appreciate. So that's a matter for you, really. I can see Councillor Williams nodding there. Thank you for that. And the other thing was, can we just be absolutely certain that it is one event a year? Is that what is now proposed?
Yes, ma'am. Yes.
It is indeed, okay, because we talked of events, and that events would be kept to a Saturday, but I take it it's events as in that one per year, which would over time perhaps add up if we were so disposed to grant. Okay. So I don't have any further questions at this moment in time, but I will demur now to Councillor Williams. Do you have any questions for the applicant?
Yes, thank you. I'd like to know, please, what travel plans in place to ensure that residents are not too upset with what's going on, particularly as this is a later evening event than we're used to with the football. And the football, well, usually midweek is never a problem, or very rarely a problem. What assurances can you give us that the parking situation is going to be better than a football game, or at least the same?
Mrs. Palmer, before you answer that, or whoever is going to answer that, did any of these supplementary packs go to any of the other persons or objectors? They did. Well, it's fairly comprehensive in there, Councillor Williams, but I'm sure that Mrs. Palmer will say it for you. Thank you, Mrs. Palmer.
Thank you, Mum. I'm obliged. As Madam Chairman has pointed out, it's in the supplemental pack that I know was circulated late, for which I apologise, but it's important that you have the most accurate version. And the transportation plan is set out at pages 19 to 21 of the papers that you were sent on the 26th of April. And there's also some detail in the Zone X to some limited detail as well. So I have touched on it and highlighted some of the important parts of that in my address. But if you want me to amplify any of that, then do please let me know.
Yes, I think for the purposes of completeness, and just so that our objectors are given assurances or given information which they can then consider, I think that would be very helpful, Mrs. Palmer, if you would. Thank you.
Thank you. So I will just draw your attention then to the transportation plan, if I may, which you hopefully have before you. And so you can see there the details of additional parking that's been arranged, coupled with the details for the post-event leaving in the plan, and also parking restrictions and enforcement of those parking restrictions, again, all set out in the plan. I will just draw my own attention to it so that I can read it in some depth.
Perhaps you could advise, I think the prescient points may be about that extra parking which you've secured in two specific areas.
Yes, Mum, thank you. So additional
centre and Avon Academy. It may be useful to
that's right.
Remind the councillor.
Thank you. So as you quite rightly say, Mum, free spectator parking is also available at Avonbourne Academy, situated off Harewood Avenue. You'll know where that is, of course. And there have been additional places procured there. So up to 250 spaces will be available. This parking facility will be available and marshalled from 1.5 hours prior to the gates opening and for an hour post the event. Additional parking has also been arranged at the Sovereign Centre in Boscombe, approximately 15 minutes walk away. Usual closing hours have been adjusted to accommodate up to 650 event spectators. There are event parking restrictions, as we've heard, on Kings Park Drive and on Thistlebarrow, and that there is liaison with the Transport Department to ensure that there are enforcement officers in that area to assist. Does that answer your question, Councillor, or would you like further information from this document?
I think I really wanted it brought out because many residents won't have seen these documents. They were late. However, Avonbourne and the Sovereign Centre have been in use by the football club for quite a long time. I think it was me that instigated it some years ago. Neither one are not used very often. Avonbourne in particular, because it does make quite a hefty walk, and if it's at night it's going to be a long distance for people to walk. They're going to use the streets, and the same with the Sovereign Centre. The Sovereign Centre don't get the volume of parking that they probably deserve because of the distance away from the football club. But those were the points I was trying to bring out. Thank you.
Thank you. I do understand that Avonbourne is only 10 minutes away and that street lighting will be on all night, and the Sovereign Centre is about 15 minutes walk away, so they're not actually that far distant from the ground. And I hear what you say, but additional parking there has been arranged, and there is every confidence that the situation is properly controlled.
Thank you very much. You'll have another opportunity, Councillor Lawrence, to tease any of that further matters out in your submission.
Understood. Thank you.
Thank you. So if there are no further questions from Councillor Williams, Mrs. Rogers, do you have any further questions for our applicant, Mrs. Palmer?
No, I just wanted to clarify. The number of events per year was reduced from 4 to 3, and then it's just for this year only, it's 1 event. So when the license, if it's granted and the license is issued, it will be referring to 3 events per year?
No, 1.
No.
1.
Just 1 event.
Just 1
per year.
Per year. Okay, that's fine.
Good. I must admit, Mrs. Rogers, it was good to have clarification because I was confused as well. So now we're all clear on that and very happy with that. Thank you. Thank you very much. So if there are no further questions from members, We'll move on then, and now it's your opportunity, Councillor Williams, as an other person to make your representation. If I could just be clear though, you registered to speak in your own behalf and also to speak on behalf of Mrs Dunning, who still has not withdrawn her objection. So that's acceptable. But you said you were speaking on other people's behalfs, but who would that be? Because there's no submission.
If I can start, I'll explain it as I go along.
Okay, because you are here just to speak on behalf of Mrs Dunning, which is the submission that you've made, just to be clear on that. Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Williams. You have the floor.
Thank you very much indeed, councillors, for agreeing to listen to me today. I declare right away I'm the ward councillor, obviously, for Littledown Myford, and a member of the licensing board, but of course not a member of today's subcommittee. I'd also like to state I represent the opinions of Councillor Dove, who's my ward colleague. Finally, I'm a resident of Littledown. I've been for more than 42 years. I'm not anti-AFC Bournemouth and certainly not anti any event held there. Today, I'm representing many residents who I'm afraid are too fearful to express their views in a public forum, because over the years, the football club have been at times challenging, and people living in the vicinity of Kings Park will complain to us councillors, but more often than not will want to remain anonymous.
Sorry, but I think I must object to this comment.
I was drawing breath to so do. I think, Councillor Williams, if you can just keep it to your submission with regard to the facts of your objection and not perhaps opinion and things that you might have heard, because they're not relevant to this application. I'd be very grateful. Thank you.
Thank you for your guidance. I have actually received a number of emails which I'm prepared to share with the chair, but they've asked to remain anonymous. This event, the boxing, has certainly filled my mailbox. I have, through their solicitor, Ms Palmer, been trying to mediate, and to be fair, what we've requested has been put in the application as conditions subsequently. Although my request for a travel plan, I don't think I saw, but we've covered that. We have two areas of concern. First, the time of alcohol licence, and I can't in all conscience agree to anything later than 10 o'clock. This is wholly reasonable, and the football club, to my knowledge, don't normally cater for late drinking. They may be able to, but I'm not aware of it. Our fear is that they will encourage antisocial behaviour, and this could lead to things like drink driving. Either way, our roads are like a car park, and when the event occurs, either Kings Park or AFC Bournemouth grounds, which of course are located in the park. This leads me to a second point. The use of microphones or DJing music until 11:30. This is just plain selfish. The area is a mixture of elderly people and young families and everything in between. And whatever the promise of noise control has been made, the ensuing sound is intolerable. And it is impossible to get down to a level where people can sleep or watch their televisions, etc., late at night. We as councillors have allowed ourselves to be persuaded by the science in the past. The theory is great, but in practice it never works. Noise carries. 10 p.m. is an hour later than any event AFC hold on their pitch normally, and I plead that you condition this. I've spoken long enough now, so I'll leave it there if I may for the moment.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Williams. So questions then of other persons, members, any questions for Councillor Williams? Councillor Kelsey?
No, thank you, Chairman.
Okay, and Councillor Johnson?
No, thank you, Chairman.
Okay, I'm concerned, I don't have a question as such, Councillor Williams, but I'm just concerned that, just to confirm that you did receive the supplementary pack with all the information on. I will demur that it was late on arrival, but you have received it. You have received it.
Yeah, yes, I did. It was late.
Yeah, but you would have had.
And I had written most of this. I'm sorry, before the supplementary pack arrived, so I tried to skip over it.
No, it's absolutely fine. Your submission was sound, perhaps from one frolic of your own, but that was fine. But I'm just saying that you have now had the time between receiving it this morning and the beginning of this matter, this subcommittee hearing. So you've had several hours to read it. So I hope that you have satisfied yourself with its content. Now, I would like to have confirmation of that.
I've read it. I'm not satisfied with it because the experience tells me that the parking in my ward
that
on a
wasn't what I asked, Councillor Williams. I asked that you're satisfied that you've read it, whether you agree
I've
with
read
it or not
it,
is
yeah.
very much a matter for you. Okay, thank you very much. So thank you, members, for that, and thank you for that clarification, Councillor Williams. Mrs. Palmer, do you have any questions for Councillor Williams?
Mum, I shall do. May I please take a few seconds just to liaise with my clients?
Yes, of course you may.
Chair, just to inform you that Miss Rogers has her hand raised also.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Councillor Kelsey. Mrs. Rogers, you have the floor.
Thank you. I just wanted to clarify and confirm, as I mentioned in my introduction, the premises are currently licensed later than what's being applied for the boxing. So do you want me to put that on the chat so that you can see what those hours are?
I think the subcommittee are well aware of them, but if you'd like to reiterate them for Councillor Williams, that might be helpful.
Yes, so the premises are currently licensed until 1 AM for entertainment and alcohol on Mondays to Thursdays, 1:30 AM Fridays and Saturdays, and midnight on a Sunday, with late night refreshment 30 minutes after those times. So the premises are currently licensed for entertainment facilities. The purpose of this application is so that boxing and wrestling is included as a regulated entertainment within the regulated entertainment. So the timings are already there. I just wanted to confirm that.
I think it's very helpful. I think that's very helpful to confirm that for Mr. Williams' information. Thank you. Was there anything else you wanted to add, Mrs. Rogers? Are you happy? No, thank you very much.
Okay.
So,
Mom, thank you
Mrs.
very
Palmer,
much
if
for
you've
that
had time to consult with your client, you have.
I have indeed, and I'm grateful to you for that. You said that you weren't aware that the football club held entertainments after 10 o'clock. You've now had the benefit of hearing Mrs. Rogers confirming the actual licence times that I referred to earlier as well. I'm advised that they regularly hold entertainments in the premises until 1:30 at the weekends in accordance with their licence. And in fact, the football, which is you were thinking may have stopped at 9 o'clock, can easily go until 10:30 if there's extra time. And quite often also hospitality clients will stay in any event until 11. The fact that you've not been disturbed by that speaks for itself, and I'm very pleased to hear that. You also indicated that there was a lot of information that came in late, and I do apologise once again for that and the necessity of that. But you have now been able to read also the updated noise management plan and to look at the graphic that Mr. Hill suggested would help you to understand the noise output and how it was being controlled. Have you had an opportunity to do that?
I have. May I just point out that the entertainment that you refer to is normally inside the club premises and not on the pitch at that time of night at 1 o'clock in the morning, and therefore any disturbance is minimalised when people leave. We're talking about a large audience leaving over a very short period of time, quite late on.
Rather like the football matches that can go on till 10:30 or 11. Yeah.
10:30, they don't go on till 11 o'clock in my knowledge.
Well, can we, Councillor Williams, please, let's not be confrontational. Okay, we're not here to argue between the parties.
As you always point out, we're not in court.
No, we're not in court, Councillor Williams. Absolutely, absolutely. And we'll we'll resolve this amicably, I'm absolutely certain. So, Mrs. Palmer, if Mr. Williams, you're content that you were able to answer that question appropriately? Is there anything else you wanted to add? Happy with that? Okay, Mrs. Palmer, any further questions?
No, Mum, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Members, I'll revert back to you just to see if there's anything else you wanted to pick up on. Councillor Kelsey?
No, thanks, Chair.
Okay, and Councillor Johnson?
No, thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. And Mrs. Rogers, were there any questions that you'd like to raise, please, or anything you'd like to add?
No, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. So now it's an opportunity then for all parties to sum up with regard to the discussions and the information that's been shared today. So those who spoke last will go first. So Councillor Williams, you have the floor. Thank you. Take as long as you like. There's no time.
Thank you. I will make it brief because I think we've probably covered most of it. Generally speaking, AFC Bournemouth have been very helpful in the lot, certainly since they've been in the Premier League. They've been very helpful and respectful to their neighbours. It's very rare that I get in touch these days, and it's usually minor problems. However, I would argue that 9:45 is more likely the time that football finishes midweek. It's a very, very rare occurrence that it goes any later, and generally people are wandering off in any case because it's midweek and they want to get home. This is a unique experience, this boxing match, and I agree, and it will be very beneficial to the town. I agree with that. What I don't agree with is allowing the drinking to go on later. I think it will lead to antisocial behaviour, and of course the noise beyond 10 o'clock as well. I personally would have said 9, but people generally think that 10 o'clock is reasonable, and I bow to that. 11:30 is not reasonable if you live in the vicinity of Harewood Avenue, Littledown Avenue, and any road up to Wessex Way and down to the Christchurch Road. You can hear the noise if the wind's in the right direction in any of those areas, and it can be very, very loud, despite, as I say, what the science tells us. We've had events in Kings Park, and I've been told the decibel level is a moderate level. It doesn't feel like that when you're at home. And a lot of my residents complain to me during these events. They ring up, they write to us, and we take the brunt of it as ward councillors. I'd rather we didn't have to take the brunt of it. I am very supportive, as I said earlier, of the football club and of this boxing match, which will put Bournemouth on the map, and I'm very grateful for them to do so. But don't do it, please, to the detriment of your neighbours. Thank you.
Very much, Councillor Williams. Mrs. Palmer, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Mum. I would start by picking up on the very helpful point that Mrs. Rogers made to you about the nature of this application and the timings already covered. Mum, the council advises that it recognises the value of encouraging a wide range of entertainment in its statement of licensing policy, and you have heard very eloquently from Mr. Argerman through the statement that I read on his behalf, and of the enormous benefits that he believes will be reaped not only by Chris and his followers and also boxing fans, but by Bournemouth itself, if this fight is permitted to take place in the terms applied for. Those terms are fundamental to the success of the event. Whilst we obviously respect Councillor Williams and the work that he does and the views of the residents who have made representations, you have no evidence before you that the proposals would harm the licensing objective of the prevention of public nuisance. And there is no adverse representation from the environmental health team in this respect. Conversely, however, you do have clear evidence that this applicant has proved its strong credentials as a premises licence holder, that the premises themselves are suitable and that the whole event is suitable and will be the premises licence holder will be suitable to operate this licence, varied as sought. I would therefore ask you to kindly grant the variation in the amended terms that are before you today. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Palmer. Thank you. And lastly, Mrs. Rogers, did you have anything you'd like to say in summary?
No, thank you.
Thank you very much. So if everybody feels that they've had the opportunity to speak fully, answer questions and ask questions, if everybody's so content, I will move forward and I will conclude the hearing. And the subcommittee will now adjourn in private with our legal advisor and our clerk to deliberate. Notification of the subcommittee decision will be provided within a period of 5 working days, beginning with the day or the last day in which the hearing was held in accordance with the regulations, and that is today, Friday, the 28th of April, 2023. And the notification of decision will include information about the right of appeal as appropriate. And I'd like to ask, please, Mrs. Almeida, if she'd kindly explain the right of appeal. Thank you, Mrs. Almeida, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. If members decide to refuse this application or attach conditions to the licence which the applicant does not agree to, the applicant may appeal to the Magistrates' Court within a period of 21 days, beginning with the day on which the applicant is notified in writing of the decision. And if any other person does not agree to the decision made to grant the application or any of the conditions to be attached to the licence, they may also appeal to the Magistrates' Court within 21 days, beginning with the day on which they're notified in writing of the decision.
Thank you very much. So thank you very much, everybody, for attending today and for your participation, and we will get a decision out to you directly. Thank you and good afternoon to you. Goodbye.
Thank you, Ma'am.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.